My name is Leah Whitmore, and I was 31 when I found out how much damage one plain tan legal folder could do to a family. My grandmother turned 78 on a Saturday in November. She made her own birthday cake that morning, vanilla with soft frosting flowers, the same recipe she had used for every birthday since I was little. She put out 7 place settings, nice china, paper napkins, a vase filled with dried hydrangeas from the bushes by her front walk. No one showed up. My parents had gone to a ski resort in Colorado. My brother texted her at 4:20 in the afternoon, "Happy birthday, Nana! Snow is perfect." My dad didn't send anything at all. My mom posted a picture of herself in ski goggles to her women's ministry group with the caption, "Feeling grateful." I drove nearly 3 hours from Riverton after work. I still had on my office flats, and there was a cheap grocery store bouquet rolling around on the passenger seat. When I got to my grandmother's house, she was alone in the kitchen. The candles had burned down into the frosting. The ice cream was half melted. She looked at me for a second like she couldn't quite place me. Then she smiled. The next day, while I was helping her straighten up the house, 2 strangers came to the door. They handed me a thick, sealed folder with my grandmother's handwriting across the flap. What was inside ended the family I thought I had. You're watching Quiet Truth Stories, where everyday people draw lines that finally get respected, and where doing the right thing matters more than keeping the peace. If you've ever had to defend someone who could no longer defend themselves, leave a comment and subscribe. I can still remember that birthday night so clearly. I left Riverton around 5, right after finishing a long day at the office. I was still wearing the same navy flats I had worn to work, and I had bought a bunch of carnations at a gas station because I couldn't show up empty-handed. The drive took almost 3 hours. First the highway, then smaller roads through Cedar Glen, where big old trees leaned over the pavement and made the road feel darker than it was. I pulled into Grandma Evelyn's gravel driveway at 8:08. Her porch lamp was on. Everything else in the house was dark. The moment I stepped into the kitchen, I understood exactly what had happened. 7 places were set at the table. She had arranged the dried hydrangeas herself in a glass bowl. Her cake sat in the middle, covered in vanilla frosting and little pink flowers. The number 78 had been piped across the top. The candles were nothing but soft wax stumps pressed into the icing. A carton of strawberry and chocolate ice cream had sweated through onto the tablecloth. Grandma was sitting at the head of the table in a pale blue cardigan. Both hands were wrapped around a glass of water. "Leah," she said. Then she gave me a small smile. A second later, she looked confused. "Is it Wednesday?" "It's Saturday, Grandma. It's your birthday." "Oh." She reached out and touched the edge of the cake with one finger. "I thought I was baking this for the church fundraiser." I put the flowers into a jar, found a clean plate, and cut her a piece. We ate cake with our fingers because neither of us wanted to deal with dishes. I sang happy birthday to her once, and halfway through, she looked up at me and said, "Could you do that again? I missed part of it." So I sang it again. Around 10, I helped her get upstairs. I didn't exactly carry her, but I had one arm around her waist and the other under her elbow. She had become so light. Her wrist felt tiny in my hand. When I tucked the quilt beneath her chin, she suddenly grabbed my fingers. Her face changed. For a few seconds, her eyes were clear, fully clear. "They think I don't see it," she whispered. I waited for her to explain, but she was already asleep. I should probably explain where I fit in my family. The Whitmores of Cedar Glen were comfortable in a very specific way. Not flashy enough to look rich, but comfortable enough that nobody ever worried about bills in public. My dad, Paul, had managed commercial accounts for a financial services company until he reached the point where he could play golf during the week and call himself an advisor. My mom, Susan, planned charity luncheons, volunteered at every fundraiser in town, and held a seat on the local arts council. My brother Colin ran a small property development business called Whitmore Development. He drove a high-end imported SUV that cost more than I made in a year. And then there was me, the person who worked with forms. I was an estate planning paralegal at a small elder law office in Riverton. 5 people total. I handled trusts, guardianship paperwork, wills, power of attorney forms, all of it. I made just under $50,000 a year, and I spent most nights studying for the bar. My family called me the paperwork girl. At holiday dinners, my mom would smile in that polite way she had and say something like, "Leah is still doing that little law office assistant job." She said it as if I spent my days making name tags at a craft fair. I never pushed back. I read the fine print instead. But my grandmother's house was different. That house belonged to me in all the ways that mattered, even if nothing had ever been written down saying so. I took my first steps on that kitchen floor. Grandma Evelyn taught me how to read a lease when I was 19, sitting on the back porch with her glasses low on her nose and a red pen tucked behind one ear. She co-signed for my first apartment because my parents said I needed to learn independence. I slept in the guest room that night, in the same bed where I had slept as a child. I lay there staring at the thin crack in the ceiling that I had traced with my eyes since I was 6. Around midnight, I got up for water. That was when I noticed a business card behind a framed family picture on the hall shelf. Carla Bennett, Bennett and Hayes Realty. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, someone had written, "Estimated value, $645,000, fast closing preferred." I put the card back exactly where I found it. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. The next morning, I cleaned the kitchen while Grandma Evelyn slept in her recliner. I put the leftover cake into containers. I threw away the melted candles. I wiped frosting from the good plates and put them back in the cabinet. As I stacked them, I had a thought I hated. These plates would probably stay there until somebody came to empty the whole house. I pushed that thought away as fast as I could. At 10:15, there was a knock at the door. A woman and a man were standing on the porch. The woman looked to be in her early 60s. She had a short silver haircut, a dark wool coat, and a leather briefcase. She had that calm, professional look that told you she dealt with serious things all day. The man beside her was younger, maybe early 40s. He had a small zip case in one hand, and I could see a notary stamp inside. "Are you Leah Whitmore?" the woman asked. "Yes." "My name is Dana Klein. This is Owen Marks." She held out a thick tan folder, sealed shut with a paper flap. "Your grandmother hired our firm 13 months ago," she said. "She directed us to deliver this to you in person when the appropriate time came." I looked at the folder. The appropriate time for what? Dana glanced past me through the screen door toward Grandma Evelyn sleeping in the recliner. Her expression softened slightly. "When you're ready, come to my office," she said. "Here's my card." She put it in my hand. Then she added, "Please don't discuss this with your parents until we've spoken." Before I could ask anything else, they were walking down the driveway. I stood on the porch holding that folder. It didn't look like much, but it felt heavy. Maybe 30 or 40 pages inside. The flap was signed across in Grandma Evelyn's handwriting. Her name was written carefully, the way she signed birthday cards, Christmas checks, and every permission slip she ever signed for me. My phone buzzed. A message from my mom. "Who was that at the door?" "Don't sign anything, Leah." I turned my phone face down and carried the folder into the kitchen. I sat at the same table where the untouched birthday cake had been the night before. I ran my finger over the seal. I knew that signature. The tall E, the long curve in the W, the clean connected letters. This wasn't a confused scribble. This was the writing of a woman who knew exactly what she was doing. I opened it. The documents inside were familiar to me from work. A recorded property deed, a trust agreement, a durable power of attorney, witness pages and notary pages, a physician's letter on clinic letterhead from 13 months earlier. At the top was a handwritten note on Grandma Evelyn's cream-colored stationery. "Leah, when they try to take the house, open this. Everything you will need is inside." I love you. I'm sorry this falls on you. Grandma. I read the note 3 times. The words, "when they try to take the house," hit me differently every time. Not if, when. She had known. 13 months earlier, before her memory got much worse, before she started mixing me up with my mother, before she left the oven on, wandered into the yard in slippers, or got lost trying to drive to the pharmacy less than a mile away. She had known somebody was going to come after the house, and she had prepared for it. I closed the folder and rested both hands on top of it. From the living room, I could hear Grandma Evelyn breathing softly in her chair. A crossword puzzle had slid crooked across her lap. She had found a lawyer. She had signed documents. She had left me instructions. That note stayed in my head all night. I lay in the guest room with the folder on the nightstand beside me, staring at the ceiling crack and listening to the old house settle around me. Monday morning, I called out sick from work. I had not done that once in 3 years. Something in me kept saying, "Don't leave her here." I found the first real proof when I went outside to put recycling in the bin. Behind the hydrangea bushes, attached to the gas meter, was a combination lockbox, a realtor lockbox. I knew immediately what it meant. You saw those things outside nearly every house listed for sale in Cedar Glen. Somebody had already been bringing strangers through Grandma Evelyn's house. I went back inside and opened the pile of mail sitting on the hallway table. There were 3 weeks of envelopes mixed together: bills, grocery flyers, coupons, church notices. Buried underneath them was a property listing sheet. It was printed on Bennett and Hayes Realty letterhead. Off-market sale, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, original wood flooring, large corner lot. Asking price, $645,000. That was $45,000 below the last comparable home sale in the neighborhood. Then I opened the kitchen junk drawer. That was where I found the part that made me sit down on the floor. A purchase agreement. It hadn't been signed yet, but every section was filled out. Buyer, Northbridge Holdings, LLC. Cash offer, 28-day closing. The seller's signature line was blank, but beneath it, in faint pencil, someone had printed E. Whitmore, like they had been practicing. The listing agent was Carla Bennett. The buyer representative was someone named Victor Hale, and listed as the seller's representative was my brother, Colin Whitmore. I sat on the kitchen floor and spread all the papers around me: the lockbox, the listing sheet, the contract, Carla's business card, a sticky note in my mother's handwriting. Target closing, December 6th. That was 3 weeks away. I picked up Grandma Evelyn's folder again and opened the trust agreement. This time I read every word. At 6 that evening, I called my mom. "Oh, Leah," she said in that bright, careful tone she used on volunteers and restaurant servers. "How is Grandma? We had such an amazing time in Colorado. The mountains were beautiful." "There's a realtor lockbox on Grandma's gas meter." Nothing. 2 seconds, then 3. "Sweetheart," she said, "your father and Colin are taking care of that. We're working with a very nice agent on a transition plan for your grandmother. There's a purchase contract in her kitchen drawer." "Leah," her voice changed right away, "this is a private family matter. Your father, Colin, and I have been handling your grandmother's affairs for some time. You don't need to concern yourself with every detail. Does Grandma know you're selling her house? She understands what is necessary." I heard glass touch glass in the background. She was probably having wine in some ski lodge restaurant. Then she said, "Colin's business has been struggling. Selling the home would pay for a proper care residence for your grandmother and help your brother through a difficult period. It is the responsible choice." "It's her house, Mom." "Leah," now her voice was cold, "your grandmother has dementia. She has left appliances running. She got lost on a drive she has made for years. She is not in a position to make decisions about a property worth more than $500,000. Then she said the thing I could not stop thinking about. She won't even remember that house by Christmas. For a moment, there was nothing between us except the quiet hum of the call. Then I said, "Then it's lucky I remember it for her." And I hung up. I put Grandma Evelyn's folder next to Dana Klein's business card under the kitchen light. The next day, I was going back to Riverton, but that night, I had a lot more reading to do. Dana Klein's office was on the upper floor of an old converted townhouse on Wellington Street. There were faded rugs in the waiting room, framed law degrees on the wall, and a small brass plaque that said Klein and Rowe, Estate Planning and Elder Law. I called at 7:30 that morning. Dana's receptionist transferred me to her almost immediately. If you have ever tried calling a law office, you know that only happens when someone has been expecting your call. "Ms. Whitmore?" Dana said. Her voice was as calm as it had been at Grandma's house. "I'm glad you reached out. Can you come in today?" So I drove the 3 hours again. Dana met me in a conference room. A pot of tea sat on the table, along with a box of tissues placed neatly between our chairs. She didn't point to the tissues or make a big deal of them. She just put them there. "Your grandmother first came to see me 13 months ago," she began. "She told me Grandma Evelyn had gotten disoriented while driving one afternoon. She ended up in a neighboring town and couldn't remember how to get home. A woman from her church recognized her car and brought her back. The next morning, she called our office," Dana said. "Had she met you before?" "She knew the firm," Dana told me. "A friend of hers had used us years ago to set up a trust." Dana paused. "Your grandmother came in alone. She was organized, alert. She had brought her house deed, her tax papers, an old will, and a yellow legal pad full of questions." "She was scared?" I asked. Dana nodded. "Very. And she was scared of what you're dealing with now." Dana folded her hands. She told me, "My son follows whatever Susan wants, and Susan will get rid of this house the first chance she gets." I stared at her. She wanted to make sure that couldn't happen once she was no longer able to stop it herself. I set down my tea. Dana looked straight at me. "She chose you, Leah. Not generally, not eventually, specifically." "Why me?" "She said you were the one person who would understand what the house meant. She said you were the only one who would fight for it." Dana opened a copy of the folder. "Your grandmother made a plan. Let me walk you through it." 13 months earlier, in September of the previous year, Grandma Evelyn had come into that office in pressed trousers and pearl earrings. She had carried a folder of her own. Inside it were the home deed, tax records, her old will from the late 90s, and handwritten questions in blue ink. Dana said Grandma had already noticed the changes in herself. "At first, it was names," Dana explained. "Then appointments. Then getting confused on familiar routes. Her doctor had mentioned early-stage cognitive decline. Evelyn told me she believed she had maybe a year, maybe 2, before she could no longer make decisions legally." "The window," I said. "She wanted to use the window while she still had capacity." "Exactly." Dana turned a page. "Your grandmother had 2 goals. First, protect the house. Second, decide who would make decisions for her when she couldn't do it anymore." "She didn't choose my dad." Dana looked at me over the top of her glasses. "No, she did not." She said it plainly. Still, it landed hard. My dad was Grandma Evelyn's only child. He grew up in that house. She paid for his college tuition. She bought his first suit for job interviews. She danced with him at his wedding. But when it came time to choose someone to protect her life and her home, she skipped right past him. Dana could tell I was trying to understand it. "Your grandmother knew Paul would give in to Susan," she said. "She knew Susan would look at the numbers, and she knew Colin needed money." Then Dana showed me the dates. On September 14th of the year before, Grandma Evelyn had signed the documents while she was still legally competent. Dr. Alana Reeves, her neurologist, had evaluated her that same day and provided a written statement confirming that she understood every document she signed. Dana tapped the doctor's letter. "This is important," she said. "This is your base." The legal structure was clean. I recognized everything from my work. First, the Revocable Living Trust. Grandma Evelyn had moved the house into the Evelyn R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust. The deed, the title, the property rights, everything. She remained trustee as long as she was capable of acting for herself. But I was listed as successor trustee. If she became incapacitated, I took control of trust property. Not my dad, not Colin, me. Second, the durable power of attorney. Grandma had named me as her agent for healthcare and finances. Because it was durable, it did not end when she lost mental capacity. That was the point. It stayed active when she needed it most. Third, Dr. Reeves's letter. The doctor had documented that Grandma Evelyn understood what a trust was, what a power of attorney did, and what it meant to transfer her home to a legal structure protected from the people she didn't trust. "So the house isn't technically hers anymore?" I asked. "Not individually, no," Dana said. "The trust owns it. Evelyn cannot sell it as a private person, and a power of attorney over Evelyn does not automatically give someone control over property already owned by her trust. Only the trustee can approve a sale." "That's right. And that would be me." "Once her incapacity is confirmed, yes. And from what you've described, it may already be active, leaving appliances on, becoming lost in familiar places. Those are serious signs." Then Dana leaned forward. "There is one more thing you should know. If your family had Evelyn sign anything recently, such as a newer power of attorney or a listing agreement, and she lacked legal capacity at that time, those documents may not hold up." "They could have gotten newer papers signed," I said. "They could have," Dana answered. "But newer does not always mean valid." I drove back to Cedar Glen that evening. The porch light was still on. Through the front window, I could see Grandma Evelyn in her recliner. The television was playing quietly. Her reading glasses were folded on the armrest. I let myself in with the spare key she had given me when I was 16. She never gave my parents one. "Grandma," I said. She looked up, and for maybe 3 seconds, her face was completely clear. Not the warm, confused expression I had gotten used to. Clear. "You went to see Dana," she said. I stopped in the doorway. "You remember Dana?" "I remember enough." She picked up her glasses, turned them over in her hands, then set them down again. "I remember being afraid," she said. "I remember going to a lawyer. I remember telling her what Susan would do." She looked at me. Did I handle it right? I sat on the arm of the couch next to her. "You handled it exactly right." "Good." She put her glasses on, then took them off as if she had forgotten why she wanted them. "They've been taking people through the house," she said. "Usually on Tuesdays. The nurse comes, and then I hear doors opening, people talking in the hallway. I hear strangers in my kitchen." "I know." "Your father doesn't look at me when he visits," she said. "He looks past me, like he's talking to the wallpaper." Her mouth tightened. "Colin brought papers. I don't remember what I signed." I took her hand. "It doesn't matter what you signed. You took care of this before that." Her fingers closed around mine. Her grip was weak, but she meant it. "I'm still here, Leah." She might not remember saying it the next morning, but I did. I decided I would remember it for both of us. Colin showed up on Wednesday. He did not knock. He never knocked. He came into rooms like he had a right to be there before anyone invited him. "Hey, Lee," he said, kissing the top of my head. He smelled like expensive cologne and the leather interior of a new SUV. "Checking in on Grandma? That's nice." "I'm staying here for a while." "Oh, really?" He opened the refrigerator, pulled out a canned sparkling water, and leaned against the counter. "Taking a break from the legal assistant life?" He said legal assistant the way other people said crochet club. "Colin," I said, "I know about the listing." The can stopped halfway to his mouth. For a second, he just looked at me. Then his smile changed. It was still there, but it wasn't friendly anymore. "Look," he said, "I get why you're upset, but you don't understand the whole situation." "Then explain it." "My business is in trouble," he said. "I have a balloon payment due in 7 weeks, $690,000. If I don't make it, the bank can take everything, all my projects, all my contracts, years of work." "You're selling Grandma's house to save your company." "I'm helping the family deal with an asset Grandma can't manage anymore." He put the can on the counter. "The money solves a lot of problems. Grandma gets a good memory care place. Mom and Dad stop worrying. I keep the company alive. Everybody benefits." "Everybody except Grandma." "Grandma doesn't even know what day it is." "She knows strangers have been walking through her house." His jaw tightened. He took a step closer. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Leah. We're family. Family is supposed to help each other." "Is that what you told her when you brought her those papers?" He stared at me. Then he smiled again, but it looked forced. "The house is basically sold already," he said. "Closing is scheduled." He left his empty can on the counter and walked out. He didn't rinse it. That night, I searched the house. At the bottom of the hallway cabinet, behind old devotional magazines and stacks of papers, I found the documents Colin had mentioned. A new power of attorney, dated October 10th. It named my father, Paul Whitmore, as Grandma Evelyn's agent for all financial and property decisions. Attached to it was a listing authorization for the house. It gave Colin Whitmore the power to act as seller's representative. I took both papers to the kitchen table and placed them beside the documents Dana had given me. The difference in Grandma's signatures was obvious before I even finished opening everything. The trust papers from 13 months earlier had her usual handwriting. The ink pressed hard into the page. Each letter flowed into the next. The capital E had a long, clean curve. Her name looked sure of itself. That was the handwriting I knew. That was the woman who wrote grocery lists in cursive and signed every school form I brought home with a fountain pen. The October power of attorney looked completely different. The lines trembled. The E barely lifted off the line. The loops in her name were gone. There were strange gaps between letters, like she had stopped several times and someone had told her where to put the pen again. It was not the signature of a woman who understood a legal document. It was the signature of a frightened, confused woman being told where to sign. I checked the date on my phone, October 10th. My stomach dropped. That was the same week Grandma had gone to the emergency room after falling in the bathroom. My mom had texted me then. "Grandma had a little fall. Nothing major. She is resting." I hadn't thought much about it at the time, but in the mail pile, I found the hospital discharge summary. It said, "Patient disoriented. Periodic confusion observed. Neurological follow-up recommended." They had arranged for her to sign a power of attorney during the exact week she had been treated for confusion. I photographed every page. Then I called Dana. Dana came to the house that Friday, not to her office, to Grandma Evelyn's kitchen. She said it mattered that we go over the documents at the table where my grandmother had lived so much of her life. The second Dana lined them up, I understood why. The table was old maple. It had scratches from decades of Thanksgiving dinners and round marks from coffee mugs. Grandma always said the marks gave it personality. Now it held 5 documents in a neat row. The first was the recorded trust deed, filed with the Cedar Glen town clerk 13 months earlier. It showed that the home at 22 Willowbrook Drive had been legally transferred into the Evelyn R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust. Stamped. Indexed. Official public record. The second document was the durable power of attorney naming me as Grandma's agent. It had been signed the same day. 2 witnesses, Owen's notary seal. The third document was Dr. Reeves's capacity letter. 2 pages, straightforward medical language. Mrs. Whitmore understands the nature and effect of the estate documents she is signing. She is oriented to time, place, and identity. She accurately identifies her financial assets and clearly explains her preferences regarding the transfer and protection of her home. The fourth document was the newer October power of attorney naming my father. Shaky signature, no medical evaluation, no independent witness, signed during a period when hospital records showed confusion. The fifth was the listing authorization. Colin named as seller representative, Carla Bennett listed as agent. The home priced $45,000 below comparable sales. Dana stood across from me with both palms resting on the table.
"The home has belonged to the trust for more than a year," she said. "Your grandmother cannot sell it as an individual. The October power of attorney does not give anyone authority over trust property, even if it were valid. And it probably isn't valid. Based on the hospital records, it is highly questionable." She looked at me. "This sale cannot close. They were trying to sell something they did not own." I stared at the 2 signatures side by side, one steady, one frightened, and I thought of my mother's voice. "She won't remember the house by Christmas." But Grandma Evelyn had remembered. She had remembered before any of them did. Dana and I made a plan, quietly, carefully, with documents, not yelling. The first thing we needed was a current capacity evaluation. We needed something a court would accept, something that could establish that Grandma had already lacked the ability to understand what she was signing in October. That meant calling Dr. Reeves's office and scheduling a formal cognitive evaluation. I called first thing Monday morning. The receptionist put me on hold for 11 minutes. When she came back, her voice was careful in a way I knew from work. It was the tone people used when they had bad news, but needed to phrase it safely. "I'm sorry, Ms. Whitmore," she said, "but there has been a request to limit access to Mrs. Whitmore's records." I gripped the steering wheel. "Limit access? To whom?" "I can't identify the person who made the request, but it was submitted about 6 weeks ago. The instructions say records and evaluations should only be released to the designated family contact." "Who is listed as the family contact?" There was a pause. "Paul Whitmore." My father. They had cut me off from her medical records. I sat in the clinic parking lot with my forehead against the steering wheel. 6 weeks earlier. That was right after the October power of attorney. They had not just pressured Grandma Evelyn into signing something, they had built a barrier around her afterward. I called Dana immediately. They restricted access to her records. "I expected that might happen," Dana said. She didn't sound surprised. "We will send a HIPAA authorization through your durable power of attorney. Yours is older, valid, and specifically names you as her healthcare agent. The clinic is required to recognize it." 2 days later, we had the records. Dr. Reeves agreed to perform a new evaluation. The system does work, I kept telling myself. It just moves slower than people do. Thursday evening, my mother came to the house. She didn't bring dinner. She didn't bring flowers. She didn't bring anything you would normally bring when visiting your elderly mother-in-law. She brought a brochure, Willow Haven Memory Residence. She placed it on the kitchen table, right where Dana and I had spread the evidence 3 days earlier. "It's a lovely place, Leah," she said. "Private rooms, gardens, activities every afternoon. They have music programs. Grandma doesn't want to leave this house. Grandma doesn't understand what she wants." My mom smoothed the brochure flat with both hands. "Your father and I have researched this for weeks. If we move her before Thanksgiving, the house can be prepared for the buyer, and everything will be done before December." I looked at her. She was wearing pearl earrings and a soft scarf she had bought on her ski trip. "You mean prepared for the buyer you already found?" Her expression slipped for just a second. Then it returned. "Leah, I understand this is emotional for you. You have always been overly attached to this house. But your brother is in a terrible position, and families are supposed to support one another. By taking a 78-year-old woman's home while she is still living in it? After all I have done for this family," she said. Her voice cracked. There were tears in her eyes. I couldn't tell if they were real. After 31 years with my mother, I had stopped trusting myself to know. "The title company already has the paperwork," she said. "Closing is December 6th. This is happening." She left the brochure on the table when she walked out. That night, I almost gave up. It would have been easier. It would have been easier to let them say I was emotional, difficult, controlling, or whatever word they had decided fit me best. But when you watch people act like an older person's value disappears as soon as their memory starts fading, it becomes hard to walk away. If this story feels familiar to you, write "I'm with her" in the comments and subscribe, because I was about to walk into that closing room. I had 9 days. The closing was scheduled for December 6th at Pine Street Title on Market Street, near Cedar Glens Town Square. My mother had booked it the way she booked lunch reservations: efficient, final, not open for discussion. The next morning, Dana and I sat in her office and went over our choices. The first option was to file an emergency petition with probate court and ask a judge to stop the sale. Dana was confident we could do it, but court filings would become public. They would take time, they would cost money, and worst of all, they would give my parents and Colin time to react, time to move Grandma, time to hire another lawyer, time to make things messier. The second option was to let the closing go forward, or at least let everyone show up for it. Dana said, "If we walk in with the recorded trust deed and the medical evidence, the title company will have to address it. They cannot insure a property when ownership is in dispute. They will not close a deal with a defective title. And if they try? Title officers are personally responsible for what they approve. No competent officer is going to record a transfer after being shown evidence that the sellers have no authority." Dana took off her glasses and placed them on the table. "This is the quiet path. No hearing, no courtroom, just documents in front of the buyer, the real estate agent, the title officer, and your family. Everyone will be in the same room. Let the papers show the truth." I thought about Grandma's note. "When they try to take the house, open this." She had not told me to start a public fight. She had given me a folder. "Let the documents speak," Dana said. 9 days. I went home and started counting. The first day, I filed a report with Adult Protective Services. I sat in my car outside the Cedar Glen Municipal Building and called the State Elder Abuse Hotline. The intake worker listened without interrupting. Her questions were clear and specific. She didn't sound shocked. That was almost worse. It told me she had heard versions of this situation before. Different people, same pattern. I explained everything. A 78-year-old woman with documented cognitive decline. A power of attorney signed during a week she had been hospitalized for confusion. An off-market sale of her home for under-market value. A grandson who would profit if the deal went through. A daughter-in-law directing the entire process. "We'll assign an investigator," the woman said. "You should receive a case number within 72 hours. "Is there any way to move it faster?" "You said there's a closing in 9 days. I'll flag the report as urgent." I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat there for a while. Across the street, 2 older women walked into the library together, laughing about something I couldn't hear. They looked safe. They looked normal. When I got back to Grandma's house, I had a voicemail from Dana. "Leah, I learned something important," she said. "A PS told me unofficially that yours is not the first report connected to this situation. Someone made an anonymous complaint about 6 weeks ago." 6 weeks. Again. Right around the time they had gotten Grandma Evelyn to sign the October power of attorney. Someone else had seen it.
someone who had been worried enough to call, even if they had been too scared to leave their name. I didn't know who it was. Not yet. But the fact that there was already a report meant the investigators would not be starting from zero. The system moved slowly, but it was moving. On the fourth day, my father came by alone. He arrived in an old sedan, not the newer car he drove to church or meetings. This was the car he used for errands, the one nobody looked twice at. He sat in the driveway for a long time before he got out. I watched from the kitchen window. His shoulders were bent forward. He looked older than I remembered. He came in through the back door, the same way he had entered that house since he was a child. At first, he didn't even acknowledge me. He stood in the kitchen and looked around. At the cabinets his mother had refinished herself, at the window above the sink, at the little glass prism hanging there, the one that threw colored light on the floor in the mornings. "She used to sing in here," he said quietly. I didn't answer. "Old country songs," he continued, "every Sunday morning. I remember." He sat down at the maple table. Both hands went flat against the surface. They were shaking. "I know you're disappointed in me," he said. I waited. "I didn't want any of this. I didn't." His voice was low. "Colin got in too deep. Susan says the house is the only way out, and Mom—" His voice caught. It was small, but I heard it. "Mom would never want Colin to lose everything." "You can still stop it, Dad." He looked at me. For 1 second, I saw the little boy he used to be in that kitchen, the boy his mother had fed at that table, the boy she carried upstairs when he fell asleep watching television. Then his phone vibrated. He checked the screen. "Susan." He stood up. "I should get going." He walked out the back door. He did not say goodbye to his mother. After he left, I washed the coffee cup he had used and put it back in the cabinet. The 5th day, I bought another cake. Nothing expensive, just a small 6-inch vanilla cake from the bakery near the post office. It had buttercream frosting because that was what Grandma loved. I bought 1 candle because putting 78 candles on a little cake sounded dangerous, and I thought she might laugh at that. At 3 in the afternoon, I placed it on the kitchen table. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 napkins. I made tea. "Grandma," I called, "come sit with me." She shuffled in from the living room. Her glasses were resting on top of her head, and a folded crossword puzzle was sticking out of her cardigan pocket. She noticed the cake and stopped. "Whose birthday is it?" "Yours," I said. "We're doing it again." She sat down. I lit the candle. She stared at the flame for a few seconds. She looked like she was trying hard to keep that exact moment in her mind. "Make a wish," I told her. She closed her eyes and blew the candle out on the first try. "What did you wish for?" I asked. She looked at me. Her eyes were clear. "I wished you would stay." We ate cake with forks this time. She told me about planting the hydrangeas by the front walk in 1991, the summer I was born. She told me the maple kitchen table had belonged to her mother in Bridgeport and had been hauled to this house in the back of a pickup truck in the late 70s. "Every mark on that table is a holiday meal I survived," she said. Then she set down her fork and leaned toward me. "Don't let them take the table." Her voice was quiet, but there was no confusion in it. "I won't," I said. "The table stays." "The table stays." I cleared the dishes, washed them, and wrapped the leftover cake in foil. On the foil, I wrote with a marker, "Grandma's birthday, 2nd try. 4 days until closing." The 6th day, the calls started. First came Aunt Sheila, one of my dad's cousins. She sounded worried, but cautious. "Leah, honey, your mother told me you're trying to take over Evelyn's finances. She said you might be, well, she used the word controlling." I closed my eyes and looked up at the ceiling. "Aunt Sheila, did Mom mention that she and Colin are trying to sell Grandma's house while Grandma has dementia?" There was a long pause. "She said it was a family decision." "It's a decision Grandma didn't make." Then my mom's friend from her church group called, then Colin's business partner. Then a woman from the gardening club who had known Grandma Evelyn for decades. Every call had the same message. Leah is overreacting. Leah is too emotional. Leah doesn't understand the family's finances. My mother had done what she always did best. She got her version of the story out before anyone could hear mine. I didn't fight back publicly. I didn't make a social media post. I didn't call people and beg them to believe me. Dana had told me, "The documents are enough. You don't have to campaign." But later that night, close to 9, I got another call. It was Aunt Beatrice, Grandma Evelyn's younger sister. She was 80, lived in a coastal town a few hours away, and was still as sharp as a tack. "Leah," she said, "I don't believe one word Susan is spreading around, and I want to tell you why." "Why?" "Because your grandmother called me last year, in September. She told me she had gone to a lawyer. She said she was getting the house protected while she still could." My throat tightened. She told me, "If something happens, stand behind Leah." I gripped my phone harder. "I'm standing behind you," Aunt Beatrice said. "Whatever you need, you have me." On the 7th day, Dana and I confirmed all the closing details. Pine Street title, December 6th, 2 in the afternoon, conference room B. The escrow officer was Marissa Cole. Dana had checked through another contact. Marissa had been in title work for more than 20 years. Thorough, careful, not someone who cut corners. Northbridge Holdings was the buyer. It was one of those regional companies that bought homes under market value, renovated them, rented them out, or flipped them quickly. Their representative would be Victor Hale. Carla Bennett would attend as the listing agent. My mother and Colin would be there claiming to represent the seller. My father would come because my mother told him to. Then Dana made one more off-the-record call to the title company. When she called me, her voice had changed slightly. "Marissa Cole flagged the file 3 weeks ago," she said. "Why?" "During the title search, she saw that the home was held in a trust. She asked Carla Bennett for clarification. Carla sent over a signed affidavit stating that the trust had been terminated and the property transferred back to Evelyn personally." "That never happened." "No, it did not," Dana continued. Marissa accepted the affidavit temporarily, but she put a note in the file that she had not found any recorded deed transferring the house back out of the trust. The closing was marked tentative until final title approval. Carla had lied. The trust had never been dissolved. The deed was still public record. The entire deal was already weak. Marissa had noticed the problem. All we had to do was put the real documents in front of her. People underestimate paperwork. Paperwork does not panic. It does not lose track of dates, and it does not forget. If you have ever been the quiet person everyone overlooked, the next part is for you. Subscribe and stay with me, because there were only 2 days left. On the 8th day, everything was ready. Dana would come to the closing as Grandma Evelyn's attorney and as counsel for the trust. She would bring certified copies of the recorded trust deed, the durable power of attorney, and Dr. Reeves's original capacity letter. Owen Marks would come as the notary who had witnessed the original documents. Adult Protective Services had assigned an investigator named Janet Rowe. She would not sit in the room. That was not how their process worked, but she confirmed that the case was active and urgent. Whatever happened at closing would be added to her file. I spent most of that afternoon at the kitchen table going over every paper one more time. Trust deed, power of attorney, original capacity letter, current evaluation, October power of attorney with the trembling signature, listing agreement, purchase contract, hospital discharge summary. Everything pointed in the same direction. Every date, every signature, every medical note. I practiced what I would say. Short sentences, no crying, no shouting, no accusations I couldn't prove. Dana had coached me. You are not going there to persuade anyone. You are not going there to argue with your relatives. You are going there to place valid documents in front of the title officer. Let her do her job. I was not the daughter they dismissed. I was not the paperwork girl. I was the successor trustee of the Evelyn R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust. I did not just have a right to sit at that closing table. I had a responsibility to sit there. That evening, I ironed a blouse and put out my work flats, the same shoes I wore the night I drove for hours just to sing happy birthday to my grandmother after everyone else forgot her. The next day, my family planned to sign away a house they had no right to sell, and I planned to be there when they learned it. The night before closing, I sat with Grandma Evelyn in the living room. She was having a good hour, not a good day. Good hours had become rare, but this was one of them. She was doing a crossword puzzle with her glasses near the end of her nose. She used a pen instead of a pencil because, as she always said, pencils are for people who don't trust themselves. "Grandma," I said, "tomorrow might be a big day." "Mm-hmm," she said, still looking at the crossword. 7 across, she read. "Legal protection for property, 5 letters." I smiled. "Trust." She wrote it in. "Show off," she said. I watched her hand move over the paper, slowly, carefully. Her handwriting was not like it had been 13 months earlier. It wasn't strong and looping anymore, but it wasn't like the October signature either. It was somewhere in between. She was still trying. She put the crossword aside and looked at me. "You're staying?" "I'm staying." She reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a leather glasses case with an old brass clasp. She had carried that case for as long as I could remember. She opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. It was a note in her handwriting, shaky but readable. "For Leah, the one who keeps the table." Underneath it was her signature, not as steady as it used to be, but intentional. "I'm still here," she said. I folded the note and put it in my wallet. In the morning, the folder, the note, and I were all going to that closing together. Pine Street Title was in a 1-story brick building on Market Street. It had tinted windows and a polished brass handle on the front door. I parked across the street at 1:45. Dana pulled in next to me 5 minutes later. Owen was already inside. The 3 of us walked in together. Dana carried her briefcase. I carried the tan folder. Conference room B was small, 10 chairs around an oval table, a water pitcher, a printer making quiet noises in the corner. Marissa Cole, the escrow officer, was organizing papers in stacks at the head of the table. She looked up when we entered. Her eyes landed on Dana, and she paused. "Ms. Klein," she said, "I wasn't aware your firm was involved in this transaction." "I represent the Evelyn R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust," Dana said. "We have documents relevant to this closing." Marissa stopped moving her pen. Before she could answer, the door opened behind us. My mother came in first. She wore a cream-colored blazer, pearl earrings, and the same bright smile she used at fundraisers. She looked like she had arrived to host a party. Colin came in behind her wearing a fitted sport coat. His jaw was set. He held a leather portfolio under one arm. My father followed them slowly. His face looked gray. He stared at the floor. Then Carla Bennett entered, blonde hair, small heels, and a thick stack of closing documents in her hand. Last came Victor Hale, the buyer's representative. Navy suit, no smile. He looked like someone who had already planned where the profit from the house would go. My mom saw me and stopped. "Leah?" Her eyes moved to Dana, then to the folder in my hands. Her smile stayed on her face, but something under it tightened. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "Taking my place at the table," I said. I sat down. Dana sat beside me. I placed Grandma Evelyn's folder in front of me and waited. The printer stopped making noise. The whole room went quiet. Marissa looked at Dana. "You said you had documents?" "I do." Dana opened her briefcase. She placed 3 documents on the table, one by one. Each one straightened carefully before she moved to the next. The first was a certified copy of the recorded trust deed. This deed was filed with the Cedar Glen Town Clerk on September 17th of last year, Dana said. It transfers the property at 22 Willowbrook Drive into the Evelyn R. Whitmore Revocable Living Trust. Leah Whitmore is named as successor trustee. My mother's smile disappeared slowly. Not all at once. It just stopped being able to hold itself together. Dana placed the second document down. This is the durable power of attorney naming Leah Whitmore as Evelyn's financial and healthcare agent. It was signed September 14th of last year, witnessed, notarized, and remains active. Colin leaned forward. "We have a more recent power of attorney," he said. "That one replaces it." Dana placed the third document on the table. "This is Dr. Alana Reeves's capacity evaluation from September 14th, she said. "It confirms that Evelyn had full legal capacity when these documents were executed." Then Dana added another letter. "I also have Dr. Reeves's current evaluation, completed last week. It confirms that Evelyn now lacks capacity. That means documents signed after her cognitive decline, including the October power of attorney obtained by your family, were signed when she lacked the legal ability to understand and approve them." Nobody spoke. Marissa picked up the trust deed. She read it. Then she compared it to the title report in front of her. Then she turned toward Carla Bennett. "Ms. Bennett, you told us the trust had been terminated." Carla's face turned white. "I was told that it had been." "The trust was never terminated," Dana said calmly. "The recorded deed proves that. This property belongs to the trust, not to Evelyn individually. This sale cannot proceed." Marissa put the documents back on the table. She sat up straighter. Then she said the sentence that ended the whole thing. "I cannot close this transaction." She remembered. She had seen the note in the file. She had seen the missing deed. And now she had the proof. Victor Hale closed his portfolio. Carla stared at the table. Colin gripped both arms of his chair so tightly that his knuckles went pale. My mother looked at me like I had personally ripped the house away from her. The quiet lasted maybe 4 seconds. Then she snapped. "This is absurd." Her voice rose as she stood up. Both palms hit the table. Her pearls swung against her blazer. "Leah is a paralegal. She has no authority. My husband is Evelyn's only son, and he has a signed power of attorney that gives him every right to make decisions for his mother." "A power of attorney signed during a week when Evelyn was hospitalized and documented as confused," Dana said. She never raised her voice. "It also has no medical capacity assessment, and even if it were enforceable, it would not grant Paul Whitmore control over assets owned by this trust." "You can't do this," Colin said, standing too. His voice did not sound polished like my mother's. It sounded scared. "I have a $690,000 payment due in 7 weeks. If this deal dies, I lose everything." "Mr. Whitmore," Marissa said, "your personal debts are not relevant to this closing." "This is my grandmother's home." "This is trust property," Dana corrected, "administered by the trustee your grandmother chose. That trustee is sitting at this table." Colin turned toward me. "You're going to tear this family apart." I looked at him. I kept my voice exactly the way I had practiced it. Not loud, not shaky, just clear. "You tried to sell a 78-year-old woman's home while she sat alone on her birthday with cake no one came to eat." His face changed. "You had her sign legal papers during a hospital stay when she was confused. You lied to the title company about a trust that was never dissolved." I paused. "And now you're telling me I'm the person destroying this family?" Colin opened his mouth. Then he closed it. His fists were tight at his sides. My mother had started crying. Not quiet tears, loud sobbing. "After everything," she said, "everything I have done for this family." My father had not said one word since coming into the room. He stared at the trust deed, at his mother's signature. I could see it all sinking in. Grandma Evelyn had planned this. She had gone around him. She had looked at her only son and decided he could not be trusted with her life. Victor Hale stood up. "I think we're finished here," he said. He nodded once to Marissa and walked out. Carla was already gathering her papers. She wouldn't look at anyone. Dana spoke into the silence. "For the record, Adult Protective Services is currently investigating possible financial exploitation of Evelyn Whitmore. The October power of attorney will be challenged formally. Any future effort to sell,
transfer, borrow against, or interfere with property belonging to this trust without Leah's approval will be treated as a legal matter." My mother stopped crying. She looked at Dana, then at me. The tears were still on her face, but her expression hardened. "You'll regret this," she said. "When Colin loses his business, when your father has nowhere to turn, when this family breaks apart, you will remember that you caused it." I stood up. I picked up Grandma's folder and put it into my bag. Then I looked directly at my mother. "You do not get to decide what she is worth." I turned to Marissa. "Thank you for handling this professionally." Marissa nodded. "I'll document this closing as void and flag the file. You'll receive an email confirmation." I walked out of conference room B. Dana came behind me. Owen held the door. The December air hit my face, cold and sharp, and I stood on the sidewalk for several seconds before I realized I had been holding my breath. Dana touched my elbow. "You did well," she said. "I did what Grandma asked me to do." That's what I meant. I drove back to Willowbrook Drive with the folder on the passenger seat. 9 days earlier, that spot had held a cheap bouquet from a gas station. The house was still there. The hydrangeas were still lined up along the walkway. The porch light was on. Inside, Grandma Evelyn was asleep in her recliner. Her crossword sat across her lap, and her glasses were still on her face. I knelt beside her and pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders. "It's done, Grandma," I whispered. "The house is safe." She moved a little. Her hand searched until it found mine. The same small hand, the same thin wrist. Her eyes opened cloudy at first. Then, for just a moment, they focused. "Leah?" "I'm here." She looked at me. "Did you save the table?" I laughed. A real laugh. It came out before I could stop it. "I saved the table." She smiled, small, certain. "Good girl." Then she closed her eyes. Within a minute, she was asleep again. Her breathing slowed. The crossword rose and fell gently with her chest. I stayed on the floor beside her chair and looked through the doorway into the kitchen, at the old maple table, scratched, stained, still right where it had stood for more than 40 years. The folder was in my bag. Her note was in my wallet. The house was protected by the trust. And for the first time in 9 days, I stopped counting. Here's what happened afterward. Colin's balloon payment came due 7 weeks later. He missed it. The bank started foreclosure proceedings on his development projects, 2 half-finished duplexes in Lakeview and a commercial parcel in Hollow Creek. Whitmore Development filed for bankruptcy that February. Colin sold the expensive SUV. The last thing I heard was that he had taken a job managing projects for somebody else's company. He made less than half of what he used to make. He never called me. He never apologized. My mother's reputation in Cedar Glen took longer to fall apart. That's how it works in smaller towns. People rarely confront you right away. They just stop inviting you places. They stop making eye contact. They start talking after you leave. Aunt Beatrice talked. Marissa documented the failed closing. The women's ministry chat where my mom had posted ski pictures went quiet around her. Eventually, she quit the Arts Council. That spring, she and my father moved into a condo in Riverton. My dad sent me one email in March, 3 sentences. I should have stopped it. I know that now. I'm sorry. I read it twice. I didn't answer. Some apologies arrive too late to fix anything. Sometimes all they do is prove that a person finally understands what they chose not to do. Adult Protective Services substantiated the complaint. Over the next few months, there were 2 probate hearings. Nobody in my family contested either one. The October power of attorney was formally voided. The court appointed me Grandma Evelyn's legal guardian and confirmed me as permanent trustee of her trust. I delayed taking the bar exam. I took leave from my firm. Then I moved into the guest room at 22 Willowbrook Drive, the room with the ceiling crack I had stared at since childhood. I became the person who made sure Grandma ate dinner, the
the person who checked that she took her medication, the person who sat with her on the porch in the afternoons when the sun came through the hydrangeas. It was not the career move I had planned, but it was the right move. One Tuesday in April, I made a cake, vanilla with buttercream, nothing elaborate. I placed it on the kitchen table, the table that had come from Grandma's mother's house all those years ago, the table that had survived dozens of Thanksgiving dinners and one attempted theft. Grandma Evelyn walked in from the living room with a crossword in her hand. She looked at the cake. "Whose birthday is it?" "Nobody's," I said. "It's Tuesday. We're having cake because it's Tuesday." She sat down. She picked up a fork. She took a bite and closed her eyes. "This is my recipe," she said. "It is. Good." She took another bite. "Don't change it." We ate cake at the kitchen table while the afternoon light came through the window. The little prism was still hanging over the sink, throwing small patches of color onto the floor. The table stayed. A person does not become less valuable because they forget things, and sometimes the quietest person in a family is the one who ends up keeping watch. That's my story. One empty birthday dinner, one tan legal folder, and one grandmother who remembered before anyone else did. If this made you think about someone you love and whether their wishes are actually protected, check on it today. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.